Today's video is brought to you by Starforge. Guys, I'm very excited to announce that we have now partnered with Starforge Systems, which truly makes the best PCs on the market. They offer several different types of PCs at multiple price points, making it easy for you to find the system that is just right for you. And Starforge is all about offering premium quality. I've gotten my own here just recently, and it has been the best PC I have ever owned. Now, all of their PCs are built by hand in Austin, Texas, by experienced builders who are passionate about what they do. On top of that, every system comes with a full 2-year parts and labor warranty. And the most amazing thing about everything here is the fact that you get your PC fast. Within a week, I had my dream PC, which is the fastest I have ever seen ever. Believe me, guys, I have waited 6 months for my PC to come in. And I've actually waited 6 months for a PC to come in, to turn around and have to send it back because it wouldn't turn on. That's a terrible feeling. A feeling you will never experience with Starforge. Guys, I've been playing Destiny for the past few weeks at frame rates that I have never experienced before, allowing me to see my enemies so vividly, whether they're from afar or literally putting their nuts in my face. The image for me is crystal clear. Starforge is the real deal and the nastiest PC I have ever owned. If you're interested in upgrading your setup, or you just want to check out what Starforge has to offer, check out our link down below in the description, as well as the pinned comments. Again, big shout out to Starforge for sponsoring today's video. Today, guys, we have the 15 biggest changes coming tomorrow. This is going to be with the launch of Season 21, aka Season of the Deep. Now, I know there's lots of questions revolving about what the hell this season is going to be about. Are we in fact going deep? And if we are going deep, where? Why? With who? Or within whom? These are the questions we want to answer today. Starting with number 1. By the way, this is my moment where I say spoilers, because this is going to be a spoiler right now. But I think it should have been obvious at this point, considering we've seen pictures and other things, but I'm still going to say spoilers. With that being said, number 1, Titan is back, and so is Sloan. Now, this is actually very similar to like Leviathan last year, which makes us wonder, how exactly are we getting Titan back? But from the trailers, yes, we're going back to Titan. Now, we don't know if that's going to be the entire planet and patrol destination, or if it's just going to be bits and pieces, similar to how the Leviathan was. Now, the first pieces of art for Season of the Deep clearly showcase 3 Guardians underwater alongside a large creature, with Deputy Commander Sloan, of all people, looking through a window at us. Now, we know Titan is pretty much all water, or rather, liquid methane oceans. And we know there's a big Leviathan-like creature on Titan. Now, back during the Red War days, Sloan was Titan's main NPC and vendor, and we thought she went out in a blaze of glory when Mars, Titan, and Mercury, as well as Io, were taken after Season of Arrivals. It turns out she's alive, but is she well? And considering after we recently ran across Asher Mir, who knows? When we actually look at her, that Taken-looking arm implies she's been putting up one hell of a fight, but it seems not without a cost. Now, new destinations are always exciting, but the added story and unvaulting implications of this area are too big to ignore. Now, number 2, and this one's gonna sound wild, but underwater gameplay. Isn't it wild? Before we got space battles, before we got Sparrow Racing League back in the game, Bungie's literally gonna allow us to go underwater, which blows our mind considering if you touch even a single drop of water in Grasp of Avarice, you die. But there's really not much to go off of here. But Bungie has cryptically been teasing us underwater gameplay in an image they clearly described as being under the sea. Now, we can see a small overgrown building and lots of coral looking life, but it's just wet. In Destiny, that's a big deal. Despite being a game that spans the entire solar system, gameplay itself rarely feels tailored to different locations. Gravity is pretty much the same, whether on the moon or on Earth, and even outer space. Bungie hasn't stated how being submerged will affect our gameplay, or whether it will at all. It is maybe a double-edged sword. I know, I'm also excited to experience a new flavor of Destiny, but stepping back for a moment, it's easy to look at the history of underwater levels in video games throughout the decades, and if there is one universal truth across the diverse and beautiful medium, it is that underwater levels normally suck. Look at Mario, Sonic, Metroid. Doesn't really matter, guys. It's not that great. At the same time, if it can land the creepiness that Subnautica landed, and that's honestly the level that I hope Bungie tries to go for. You gotta make going deep creepy. Now, number 3, we are getting new Strand Aspects. Now, despite largely positive reception for the new Strand element and subclass, Lightfall only delivered 2 aspects for each player class. Since only 2 aspects can be equipped at a time, it was a bit of a letdown to have this brand new sandbox element with somewhat limited variability. By comparison, every other subclass has 3 or even 4 aspects tied to them. We always knew that new Strand aspects would come eventually, and that time is finally here. Each of these aspects will be acquirable through a new pursuit after visiting the Pukapan and Neomunis Hall of Heroes next season. Now, first, hunters are going to be receiving the Aspect Threaded Spectre, where you activate your class ability to leave behind a decoy woven from Strand matter that draws the attention of nearby combatants. And after taking significant damage, or when combatants approach, the decoy detonates, dealing damage and releasing threadlings that seek out and attack nearby foes. Now, this is Destiny's first decoy ability with some interesting PvP hooks. It pings radar, has a health bar, and a nameplate, and it gives hunters more ways to generate threadlings. Now, I know back inside of Halo Reach, we had the decoy, which at times would bamboozle enemies. This one isn't just gonna be some mirage or image being projected across the battlefield in its linear fashion. It's supposed to actually do some things, on top of course, drawing enemy fire inside of PvE. Now, next, Titans are getting the Aspect Fletched Storm. While sliding, activate your charged melee ability to leap into the air, knocking nearby targets away and dealing damage. And while airborne, you activate your charged melee again to launch a cluster of damaging, unraveling projectiles. Repeatedly activating melees will chain additional throws. And this looks juice. We saw some gameplay of it, and no lie, guys, I'm excited about this one. Bungie says this is a way to give Strand Titans more potency at range, while also giving them easier ways to unravel enemies, all within the Berserker's theme of unbridled rage. And finally, we have Warlocks, who are getting the Wanderer. Tangles you throw attach to enemies and detonate into a suspending burst. Threatening final blows create a tangle. Now, we also saw gameplay of this, and no lie, guys, I'm not that excited about it. I'm just saying. Let me just be real with you. It looked the weakest of the three, okay? Doesn't mean I won't try it, but no, it doesn't exactly look spicy. Now, number 4, no increased power cap. Now, this is one of the biggest changes, guys. And it's simply that nothing is changing at all, at least in regards to our power level. Every expansion or season in Destiny has had some increase in power level dating all the way back to the Taken King, which established our current power system. Now, back then, the highest power a piece of gear could achieve was 360, and we're at 1810 right now. We've come a long way. Now, this is a welcome change, and it's a long time coming. In recent years, Bungie has significantly reduced the amount of power grind each season and limited the effect that power has on gameplay. While power level used to be an important number in determining combat difficulty, the popularity of things like Grandmaster Nightfalls and of course contest mode raids made it clear that fixed difficulty was the way forward, rather than a game-wide scaler tied to power grinds. Now, the good news is twofold. If you didn't reach the power cap of 1810 last season, you're fine. Keep on grinding, take your time, but if you did, you don't have to chase pinnacles anymore. Focus on content that you enjoy. Now, while this shift in direction raises questions about rewards and motivation, it's hard to ignore the fact that even for veteran players, this is a lot to do in Destiny. Guardian ranks reset seasonally, and we're getting a new weapon reward from the competitive Crucible playlist, and the list goes on. No new power grind also means Grandmasters will begin much sooner. Power is now just one less thing to stand between you and the things you want to do in the game. Now, I do want to mention that power grind isn't just going away completely. It's probably going to be situated with the annual expansions only, which I believe most players would rather that. Do the power grind in the annual expansion. That makes sense. Leaving the seasonal grinds to the seasonal content itself. Now, number 5, the seasonal structure is changing. Speaking of things not returning next season, the grid system that we have become so familiar with its time gates and unlockable upgrades tied to seasonal activities, it is gone. Back in December, amidst the climax of community burnout discourse, game director Joe Blackburn tweeted some teases that come in Season 21, where there will be new ways of progressing through a season. And this was confirmed in his blog post, Lightfall and the Year Ahead, that was posted in February. Now, this is exciting and huge for 2 reasons. Number 1, variety is the spice of life. This structure has been bland for a while. Even if a seasonal activity is fun, this grid structure reduces pretty much everything to a waiting game until you have the right upgrades unlocked to access certain parts of the mission or even get rewards that are actually worth your time. It was fine for a while, but we've all gotten used to it by now, which has made it bland. And then number 2, we really have no idea what to expect here, which makes this new season exciting. There are rumors swirling about, but regardless, we don't really know what the reward structure will be that will incentivize our journey through the seasonal story. Balancing an engaging weekly story with reasonable time commitments for everyone is a hard task that Bungie used to solve really with time gating. Without that tool, every part of Season 21 will feel different. The loot, the progression, weekly story missions, seasonal activities, crafting patterns, all of this has been standardized really for years. And now we're truly heading into the unknown. Unless, of course, Bungie says psych and still hit us with the same time gates, but we'll have to wait and see. Again, though, they said they weren't. For the time being, I'm gonna believe them. Number 6, refundable artifact perks. Now, this may seem like a small thing, but it is one quality of life change that we have to bring up here. Resetting the artifact perk to reselect active perks has always been contentious. First, because it was expensive, and now because it's just a pain. Choosing a different perk for different builds should be easy, but you have to reset the entire artifact, effectively deselecting everything, then reactivating your desired perks one at a time. Again, not game breaking, just annoying. Bungie clarified that this was due to technical limitations that couldn't be addressed before Lightfall, but Season 21 will update artifact perks to be individually refundable. This is a UI change, not a gameplay change, but managing the artifact is so integral to the game that we had to put it on this list. Even behind the scenes, our team repeatedly throws this feature at the top of the list of changes this season. Now, will it actually allow us to save it within loadouts? And then when selecting those loadouts, will it actually swap out the artifact perks? I know, we're probably dreaming at this point, but still, I'm looking forward to this base change either way. Number 7, exotic armor tuning. Bungie is also taking a huge pass on exotic armor in general, mainly those that are underperforming or just plain bad, and giving them a bit of love. Now, we've gone over all these changes and even posted up builds. Guys, we're almost going blue in the face here talking about these exotics, but the changes here are significant. Now, speeding through the exotics that are getting adjusted this season includes Sealed Homkar's Grass, Arthur's Embrace, Oathkeeper, Roger's Harness, Radiant Dance Machines, Stompies, Mask of Bacchus, Point Contact Can Embrace, No Backup Plans, Second Chance, Eternal Warrior, Camprie's Horn, Path of Burning Steps, Doom Marchers, Vesper of Radius, Chromatic Fire, Dawn Chorus, Sanguine Alchemy, Claws of Hamkara, Mana of Battle Harmony, Ophidian Aspects, Promethean Spur, and Starfire Protocol. This is one of the largest exotic passes Bungie has ever done, and most of these exotics on this list are currently considered the worst exotics in the game. It's going to be really crazy next season when we're seeing Warlocks rocking Chromatic Fire or Titans wearing Point Contact Can Embrace inside of GM content. Also, remember to pour one out for Starfire Protocol, as yes, Bungie is nerfing that one significantly. Guys, we're going to have pre and post testing for all of these exotics. So if you're curious to know how these exotics change and how significantly those changes are, feel free to subscribe. We'll be following up with that video first thing this week. Now, number 8, exotic armor focusing and decryption. Now, a way to guarantee specific higher stat roll exotic armor pieces is finally hitting the game with the new exotic armor focusing and decryption system coming to good old Master Raoul. Now, standard decryption will allow you to decrypt exotic engrams for free to receive random drops from the standard exotic engram loot pool. This is essentially the current system of decrypting exotics. Focusing will allow the decryption of specific exotic armor pieces, giving us a new way of farming for god rolls outside of just lost sectors. I know, we've got grandmasters, but again, it's the ability to focus. Now, exotic armor focusing will come in 2 tiers. Tier 1 will provide a random roll of an exotic from an associated expansion. If you want a chance at a better roll Renewal Grass for your hunter, use Tier 1 focusing on an exotic engram through the Witch Queen exotic armor focus, since that's the expansion in which Renewal Grass was introduced. With 8 different categories for this Tier 1 focusing, you're able to spend a small amount of materials and a higher chance to get an exotic that you want. Now, it's important to note that the Lightfall exotic armor focusing will not be available until a future season after Season 21. And in order to get the exotic that you want, you have to own the associated expansion for that exotic, and you have to have previously acquired all armor pieces within the engram for your class. Tier 1 focusing will cost 1 exotic engram, 30,000 glimmer, and 1 ascendant shard. Now, Tier 2. Tier 2 allows us to focus a specific exotic armor piece, but for a higher cost. Once again, this requires ownership of a focus item's associated expansion, as well as having previously acquired that piece of armor. The cost for this will be 1 exotic engram, 60,000 glimmer, 3 ascendant shards, and 1 exotic cipher. I know, it's expensive, guys. To make this focusing worth your while, Bungie has adjusted how stats will randomly roll on exotic armor. Going forward, new exotics should constantly have total stat counts averaging in the mid-60s, with more frequent individual stat spikes starting next season. And considering that price, I would hope so. The stats on these exotics are going to have to be something hefty for us to spend this price. Nonetheless, guys, still a massive change. Number 9, exotic weapon tuning. Now, while we don't know how the loot structure will work, we have a good idea of how our current weapons will be handling thanks to a detailed weapon tuning blog which outlined the changes to certain weapon archetypes alongside buffs, nerfs, and reworks to 17 exotic weapons. Guys, this includes Eyes of Tomorrow, Graviton Lance, Jade Rabbit, Manicore, Lumina, Hardshot, Roll 90, Sweet Business, Legend of Actress, Tommy's Matchbook, No Time to Explain, Skyburner's Oath, Salvation's Grip, Bad Juju, Fighting Lion, Thunderlord, and Winter Bites. Now keep in mind, while not all these changes have the potential to be meta shifting, it's gonna be wild seeing Salvation's Grip actually be a contender. And things like Legend of Actress, Tommy's Matchbook are set up to make some serious waves here. Again, pre and post testing for all of these, but the sandbox changes this season alone, just to start things off, are massive. Now number 10, Deepsight Activation. Weapon crafting has been through many fairly large changes since its introduction with the Witch Queen last year. That evolution continues in Season 21 with Deepsight Activation, a new method by which players will be able to manually enable deep sight resonance on a weapon to extract its pattern, eventually unlocking that weapon to be crafted at the Enclave. Now this will be done using a new mod slot available on eligible weapons. Now to use a Deepsight Activation on a weapon, you will need a new currency called Deepsight Harmonizer. Now non-raid weapons will cost 1 harmonizer. Raid weapons will cost 1 harmonizer and 15 spoils of conquest. Now this Deepsight Harmonizer currency can only be obtained from the season pass and its rank rewards, 3 of which are going to be on the free rank pass and the other 3 on the paid. This, again, is the only source of this currency in its initial rollout. Additionally, only 1 harmonizer can be stored in the inventory at any time. Now, Deepsight Activation cannot be used on weapons whose patterns have already been unlocked, weapons that have already had their Deepsight resonance extracted, or weapons purchased from vendor chests at the end of raids. However, weapons purchased from things like Xur, Banshee will support Deepsight Activation, which is why I mentioned in the past, guys, in our video when we broke down Deepsight Activation, if there is a weapon that you see pop up from these vendors, for instance, an Ikelos SMG, say you're 2 patterns off, just go ahead and pre-purchase right now those 2 Ikelos SMGs, and then next season you'll be able to apply Deepsight Attunement to both of those, allowing you to obtain the weapon pattern. Again, this is not a perfect system, and I hope Bungie opens up more sources for these harmonizers, but in the least, this is a great way to top off those 4 out of 5 or even 3 out of 5 weapon pattern progress to just give you that weapon pattern. With that being said though, Bungie is gonna have to come back and take a look at this, because for people trying to catch up on old weapons, 6 is definitely not enough. Now number 11, new mods. Guys, we have had 2 armor mods announced for Season 21 that I think are gonna make a big splash in your current builds. One of them is Powerful Attraction. When using your class ability, you collect all orbs of power within a radius determined by the number of copies of the mod you have equipped. Now the design note here states that the request for a Seeking Orbs mod, which is what we used to have with our wells, that essentially would allow orbs to track to our location, wouldn't really work. Adding such functionality to an object that is spawned as frequently in such numbers and for all Fireteam members could create memory, performance, and latency issues. So Bungie's answer to this is Powerful Attraction. And considering how often we're popping our class abilities, you can imagine how easy it's gonna be to snag those orbs and top off armor charges. Next, we have Elemental Charges. We're collecting the subclass collectible associated with your damage type, whether it be Fire Sprites, Ionic Traces, Stasis Shards, or Void Breaches, has an escalating chance to grant you a stack of armor charge. And on Strand, this is granted by destroying tangles. Now, Bungie did mention in their design notes that the frequency of gaining a stack of armor charge is tuned differently for each collectible to account for the differences in frequency and volume for creating these collectibles. Now, you can imagine pairing these mods with the updates to things like Shoot to Loot, which can now be used to loot orbs of power. There are going to be so many ways to almost passively grant yourself armor charge. Now, big change number 12, Raid Exotic Triumphs. Last year, the Duality Dungeon introduced a mechanic that increased the drop rate of its unique exotic weapon, Heart Shadow, by completing specific triumphs related to the dungeon and its seal. Now, this went over very well for Duality, as well as Spire of the Watcher and Root of Nightmares, prompting calls to apply this system to older raids and dungeons. And Bungie actually listened. Starting in Season 21, triumphs tied to Vault of Glass, King's Fall, Last Wish, Deepstone Crypt, and Vow of the Disciple will grant us increased drop chances for the associated exotic for those activities. For my raiders that still have not received those exotics, this is an incentive to now hit those raids, knock out those triumphs, and finally help yourself combat the terrible luck of RNG at times. Again though, it is still RNG, so keep that in mind, but this gives you the power to reduce it significantly. And for my folks that have done dozens of clears and still haven't gotten things like Vex Mythic Class or Touch of Malice, it's time to rejoice, because the drop rate for all these exotics should be much better for you. By the way, the drop rate bonus applies retroactively. That's right. If you've already completed the updated triumphs, your chances at the raid exotic just went up at the beginning of season 21. Now, number 13, super tuning. Guys, we had an entire blog completely focused on ability tuning this season. Now, I mentioned some other things like balance updates for all 5 subclass elements, fragments and aspect costs, much more. And by the way, if you want to check out that video, go right ahead. But the adjustments to supers stand out because even after the recent updates to roaming supers, we are seeing sweeping buffs for just about everything. All supers are receiving 20% PvE damage resist, and things like Golden Gun and Arc Staff are receiving a 20% PvE buff. Spectral Blades is getting a 35% buff inside of PvE, and its heavy attack will weaken targets on hit. Gathering Storm is getting a buff inside of PvP. Titans are seeing massive buffs across the board for Fist of Havoc, Glacial Quake, Sentinel Shield, Hammer of Soul, and Burning Maul. And Warlock is actually getting some love for Nova Warp and Nova Bomb, as well as Storm Trance and Chaos Reach, which will be able to apply Jolt in this season, and a small bump there for Winter's Wrath. Now, every one of these changes we tested already. We did a pre-test for super damage inside of PvE. We didn't test every super, as we mainly wanted to focus on the supers that were changing, giving us a baseline for how much things have changed season to season. We'll be doing a video this week also, testing those same supers in the same scenarios and same conditions, just to see how much the needle was moved here. Again, if you want to check out that video, a link to that in the description below. Now, number 14, Trials of Osiris. Trials is getting some major changes. For the first time since its reintroduction to Destiny 2, Trials of Osiris will no longer be elimination by default. Trials Labs has been flirting with this for months, but the delayed capture point version of Trials, called Dominion, is now going to be the standard mode. Yes, you can still win by knocking out the enemy team, but there will always be a capture point giving players the option to focus either on kills or objectives. Now, this change also gives Bungie more control over balancing certain maps by adjusting spawns or capture points. Now, this comes alongside updates to passages of Wealth and Mercy, where things like Mercy is going to forgive 2 losses next season, as well as new cosmetic rewards, and our first PvP-focused glaive, which I know, Cross, we just got so many glaives. I get it. I'm not that excited about it, but maybe it's going to be nasty. So for the first time in a long time, Trials is going to be feeling fresh. Bungie's also changing the matchmaking system with Practice Pool and Challenger Pool, completely migrating away from card-based matchmaking to connection-based matchmaking. Believe me, I still think Trials is still going to be very challenging, but hopefully this will be a net positive for everyone in Season 21. Now, finally, number 15, Reticle updates. For the first time in years, unless you're counting shotguns, our weapon reticles are being updated. Now, there are some basic fixes, such as reticles responding more accurately to field of view changes, more tangible benefits like showing charge meters for swords, fusion rifles, and exotics, as well as more immersive and ornamental changes, such as merging the aesthetics of the weapon's built-in ADS reticle and its hipfire reticle. This may seem like a small thing, guys, but again, when we talk about big changes, this is quality of life changes here that we have to put on the list. At one time, Bungie used to focus on nothing but new content. That's all they cared about. And the fact that we're actually seeing them double back and touch on these old systems, improve them. As a longtime player of Destiny 2, this is exactly what we want to see more of. So guys, that's it. There's a lot of other changes, but those are our 15 biggest. Things like more fragment slots for aspects, a new dungeon. Maybe we're finally gonna get some answers as to what the hell is going on with the Veil. Either way, Season of the Deep launches May the 23rd. If you want to come join us, guys, we'll be live this Tuesday for the launch. We'd love to have you there. I'm sure we're gonna get a trailer dropping on us at some point. I'm hella hyped, and fellas, I'm ready to go deep with all of you. Giggity. Fellas and ladies, thank you all for coming and watching, and as always,
Slap that like button like your mama told you right.